I am Brenda Hayes, 32 years old, a woman who has always believed in the value of dreams and the path I chose, even if that path was never recognized by my family. The family dinner at my sister's hilltop mansion in Boulder, Colorado began as it always did, filled with dazzling lights, laughter echoing through the room, and the familiar air of self-satisfaction I had known since childhood. I sat at the long oak dining table, my simple sweater a stark contrast to the sparkling crystal chandelier above, much like the way I have always stood apart from the glamorous world they so proudly called success. When the waiter brought out the appetizers, my sister leaned forward, a familiar glint of disdain in her eyes. Still playing entrepreneur Brenda, she sneered, her voice low but loud enough for everyone to hear. "When will you finally grow up and get a real job?" The whole table burst into laughter. My father chimed in, his tone sharp. "You need something stable like everyone else." My mother nodded and added, "Why can't you be more practical?" Even my cousin, usually, the quiet one, chuckled, his glass of wine pausing midair. I forced a smile, my fingers tightening around my phone. Their words were like needles piercing my pride, but they were nothing new. For years I had been the dreamer they dismissed, the one who was never good enough in their eyes. But they had no idea. They didn't know that I held the key to the perfect world they were living in. While they were still laughing, I quietly slipped my phone under the table, my heartbeat steady. I called my investment firm, my voice low but firm. "Cancel it. Cancel everything. Immediately." I hung up, my pulse quickening. In 30 minutes, their phones would start ringing, their smug expressions would collapse, and they would finally understand who truly held the power in this room. I leaned back, took a sip of cold water, and waited calmly for the coming storm. "Before we get into my story, tell me what time it is where you're watching this and which city you're in, so I can see just how far my story has traveled." On my drive to Boulder, I dreamed of a warm evening. The winding roads to my sister's hilltop mansion stretched ahead, and my old Toyota hummed quietly, a far cry from the luxury vehicles I'd passed on the way. I gripped the steering wheel, my mind drifting back to a time when I was 23, barely out of college. I'd built an education app from scratch, coding late nights in a cramped apartment. When Google offered $30 million to buy it, I signed the deal without hesitation. That sale was my first big win, the spark that ignited my career as a venture capitalist. It wasn't luck. It was years of grinding, learning markets, and betting on the right ideas. Over the next 10 years, I built a portfolio worth $950 million. I backed 5 major ventures, 2 in renewable energy, 1 in biotech, and 2 in software, each turning startups into industry leaders. My biggest bet was on a medical tech company struggling to get off the ground. I saw potential where others saw risk, and my investment gave it the push it needed. That company was Vitaltech, now led by my sister Gloria, who graduated from Stanford with all the fanfare I never got. To my family, she was the shining star, the one who made it big. I was just the dreamer, the one they never took seriously. Growing up, family gatherings were a constant comparison game. Dad would praise Gloria's grades, her internships, her real career path. Mom would nod along, her eyes lighting up when Gloria spoke. I'd sit quietly, my small victories like winning a coding competition or landing my first angel investment brushed off as hobbies. Gloria, 4 years older, always had the spotlight. At 32, I still felt like the overlooked kid trying to prove I wasn't wasting my life. They didn't know I held 51% of Vitaltech's shares, a $40 million stake I'd kept secret to avoid their judgment. Tonight I wanted something different. I'd packed gifts for everyone, a leather-bound journal for Dad, a scarf for Mom, a craft beer set for my cousin Mark, hoping to bridge the gap. I imagined us laughing, sharing stories, maybe even understanding each other. But deep down, I braced for the usual. Gloria would dominate the conversation, Dad and Mom would side with her, and I'd be the odd one out. The thought twisted my stomach, but I pushed it aside. I wanted to believe we could be a family, not a battlefield. My phone buzzed as I neared Boulder. An email from William Pierce, my portfolio manager, popped up. I pulled over to read it. The update showed my investments thriving $950 million and growing. Vitaltech was preparing for an IPO with my stake set to double in value. William's note was brief. Everything's on track. Call if you need me. I stared at the screen, a mix of pride and frustration swelling inside. I'd built this empire, but my family saw me as a failure. The email grounded me, a reminder of what I'd achieved despite their doubts. I parked outside Gloria's mansion, the lights glowing against the Rocky Mountains. My heart raced, not from nerves, but from resolve. I took a deep breath, grabbed the gift bags, and stepped out of the car. Whatever happened tonight, I was ready to face it. I'd spent years proving myself to the world. Maybe it was time my family saw who I really was. As the appetizers were served, Gloria launched her attack. The dining room buzzed with the clink of glasses and the hum of conversation, but her voice cut through like a knife. She leaned back in her chair, a smug smile spreading across her face. Vitaltech just closed a $150 million deal, she announced, her eyes sweeping the table for admiration. We're revolutionizing medical diagnostics. It's the kind of work that changes lives. Her tone was triumphant, as if no one else in the room could match her. I sat across from her, picking at my salad, my jaw tight. I'd heard this routine before, Gloria's endless need to prove she was the family's success story. Dad, sitting at the head of the table, raised his glass. "That's my girl," he said, his voice warm with pride. Then he turned to me, his expression shifting to skepticism. "What about you, Brenda? How much are you actually making with those little projects of yours?" The question landed like a jab, his doubt hanging in the air. I forced a neutral smile, my fingers curling around my fork. "Enough to get by?" I said softly, keeping my voice steady. The truth, my $950 million portfolio, burned in my chest, but I held it back. "They didn't deserve to know, not yet." Mom chimed in, her tone laced with pity. "You should consider a real career, sweetheart. Maybe Gloria could get you a spot in Vitaltech's marketing department. It's stable, with benefits." Her words stung, implying my life's work was a hobby, something to be fixed. I glanced at Gloria, hoping for a shred of support, but she just smirked, sipping her wine. The suggestion felt like a trap, a way to pull me under her shadow. I murmured, "I'm happy where I am," but my voice barely carried over the clatter of plates. Mark, my cousin, shifted in his seat. His curiosity piqued. "So, Brenda, do your startups actually have, like, real revenue?" he asked, his tone more inquisitive than cruel, but still grating. The question hit a nerve, as if my entire career was a game of pretend. I met his gaze, my patience thinning. "They do fine," I replied. My words clipped. Inside I was seething, but I kept my face composed, refusing to let them see me crack. Their laughter from earlier still echoed in my mind, each jab building on years of dismissal. I took a slow breath, trying to anchor myself. The room felt smaller, the air heavier with every word they spoke. Gloria, not content to let it go, leaned forward again, her laughter sharp and deliberate. "Come on, Brenda, it's time to give up those pipe dreams," she said, her voice loud enough to draw every eye. "Startups are cute, but they're not a career. You're not a kid anymore." The table fell silent for a moment, her words hanging like a guillotine. Dad nodded faintly. Mom looked away, and Mark fidgeted with his napkin, unsure how to respond. The weight of their judgment pressed down, but I refused to break. I'd spent years building something real, something bigger than their narrow view of success. My hand rested on my phone, the same one I'd used moments ago to set things in motion. I didn't need their approval, not anymore. I straightened in my chair, my resolve hardening. Let them laugh, I thought. They'd see soon enough what I was capable of. For now, I'd play their game, but the rules were about to change. I stepped onto the balcony, staring at the Rocky Mountains to steady myself. The cool, evening air hit my face, a sharp contrast to the stifling tension inside. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out my phone and opened the investment app. The screen lit up with numbers that told a story my family couldn't imagine, a portfolio worth $950 million. My eyes locked on one line: Vitaltech 51% ownership valued at $40 million. That stake was my ace, the silent power I'd held for years, hidden from their scorn. I scrolled through the figures, each one a testament to the risks I'd taken, the nights I'd spent analyzing markets, and the bets I'd won. My mind flashed back to a rainy afternoon years ago, when Gloria's startup was just a pitch deck no one wanted. She'd been turned down by every investor in Silicon Valley, her confidence shaken. I saw something in her idea, a medical tech platform that could save lives. So I wrote the first check funding Vitaltech's seed round through a discreet holding company. Gloria never knew it was me. To her, I was just the little sister chasing daydreams. The irony burned her success. Her precious company rested on my belief in her when no one else cared. I couldn't take it anymore. Their laughter, their smug assumptions. I dialed Sheila, my best friend since college, who always saw through the noise. "They're at it again," I said, my voice low but steady. "Gloria's acting like she's the queen of the world, and Dad and Mom are eating it up. They think I'm a failure." Sheila's voice came through, calm but firm. "Brenda, you're worth more than all of them combined. You don't need their validation. Do what you need to do." Her words hit hard, reminding me of the strength I'd built over years of being underestimated. Sheila didn't stop there. "You've always backed the underdog," she said. "You saw potential in me when I started my firm, and you were right. Show them who you are." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. She was right. My value wasn't in their approval, but in the empire I'd created. I'd spent too long letting their words chip away at me. Tonight, that ended. I thanked Sheila, my resolve sharpening with every word she spoke. My phone buzzed again, a message from William, my portfolio manager. "All set for liquidation if you give the word," it read. "Vitaltech stake ready to move. Just confirm." I stared at the text, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Liquidating my 51% would tank Vitaltech's IPO, unraveling Gloria's carefully built empire. It wasn't just revenge, it was justice for years of being dismissed. I typed a quick response: "Stand by. I'll let you know soon." My heart pounded, not with doubt, but with clarity. This was my moment to rewrite the story. I took a deep breath, the mountain air grounding me. The noise from the dining room, Gloria's voice, Dad's chuckles, Mom's murmurs faded into the background. I slipped my phone into my pocket and turned back toward the house. My steps were steady, my mind clear. I wasn't the little sister they mocked anymore. I walked back to the table, my face calm, but my heart blazing with purpose. They had no idea what was coming, but I was ready to show them. While Gloria boasted about the IPO plans, I called William. Her voice carried across the dining room, detailing how Vitaltech would dominate the medical tech market. I slipped my phone from my pocket, my fingers steady as I dialed my portfolio manager. "William," I said quietly, keeping my voice low to avoid attention. "It's time. Liquidate my 51% stake in Vitaltech. All of it. Now." The words felt like a release, a line drawn after years of being belittled. I leaned against the table, my eyes fixed on the untouched dessert plate in front of me, waiting for his response. William's tone was cautious but professional. "Brenda, this will tank their IPO. The market will see it as a vote of no confidence from a major shareholder. Your identity as the owner of that stake will come out. There's no hiding it once we move." "Are you sure?" His warning hung in the air, but my resolve didn't waver. I'd kept my ownership secret to avoid family drama, but their mockery had pushed me too far. "I'm sure," I replied firmly. "Do it. I want it done tonight." William paused, then said, "Understood. I'll start the process. You'll hear from me soon." I hung up, a quiet surge of power coursing through me. Next, I texted Charles, my lawyer, who'd handled my deals for years. "Prepare the legal documents for the Vitaltech liquidation," I wrote. "I need everything airtight. No loopholes, no delays. Charles replied almost instantly, "On it. I'll have the paperwork ready by morning. Confirming now full liquidation of your stake." I typed back, "Yes. Full liquidation. Move fast." My fingers moved with precision, each message a step toward dismantling the pedestal Gloria stood on. I glanced up, catching her gesturing animatedly about stock projections, oblivious to the storm I'd just unleashed. Across the table, Gloria's phone buzzed, cutting through her speech. She frowned, picking it up, her expression shifting from confidence to confusion. "Excuse me," she muttered, scrolling through a message. Her face tightened as she read what I knew was the board's first alert about my liquidation. "This can't be right," she said under her breath, her fingers tapping frantically. Dad raised an eyebrow, asking, "Everything okay?" Gloria forced a smile, but her eyes betrayed panic. "Just a work thing," she said, her voice unsteady. I watched her squirm, my face a mask of calm, though inside a weight lifted. For the first time that night, I felt in control. I leaned back in my chair, my hands folded, projecting serenity. The years of being dismissed, called a dreamer, a failure, melted away with each second of Gloria's growing unease. I didn't need to shout or argue. My actions would speak louder than their words ever could. The dining room's chatter continued, Mom talking about vacation plans, Dad sipping his coffee, but I was elsewhere, savoring the shift in power. This wasn't just about money, it was about respect, something they'd never given me. Mark, sitting to my left, noticed the change in the air. He leaned closer, his voice low. "You okay, Brenda? You seem different." His tone was gentle, tinged with concern, unlike the earlier jabs from the others. I met his gaze, offering a small smile. "I'm fine, Mark," I said, my voice even. "Better than ever, actually." He nodded, but his eyes lingered, as if sensing something bigger was unfolding. I turned my attention back to the table, ready for the next move. The game had changed, and I was playing to win. 30 minutes later, Gloria's phone kept buzzing, shattering the mood. The dining room, once filled with her confident chatter about Vitaltech's upcoming IPO, fell into an uneasy hush. She glanced at her screen, her brow furrowing deeper with each notification. Then it rang loud and insistent. She answered, her voice sharp. "Joseph, what's going on?" I watched from my seat, my expression neutral, as Joseph, the chairman of Vitaltech's board, spoke. His words were clipped, urgent. "We've confirmed it, Gloria. The majority shareholder pulling out is Brenda. She owns 51%. The color drained from Gloria's face, her hand gripping the phone like a lifeline. I stood, picking up the remote for the dining room's flat-screen TV. With a press of a button, I mirrored my phone's investment app onto the screen. The numbers glowed brightly, a portfolio worth $950 million, with Vitaltech's $40 million stake highlighted. The table froze, forks clattering against plates. Gloria's eyes widened, darting between me and the screen. Dad's jaw dropped, and Mom's hand flew to her mouth. I let the moment sink in, the weight of their earlier mockery now a distant echo. "That's me," I said calmly, my voice cutting through the silence. "Your dreamer. Your failure owns the company you've been bragging about." Gloria pushed back her chair, her face a mix of shock and fury. You're the one tanking my company," she demanded, her voice rising. "How could you do this to me?" I met her gaze, unflinching. "I believed in Vitaltech when no one else did," I said evenly. "But I'm done letting you treat me like I'm nothing. You wanted to play superior. Now you know the truth." My words were steady, each one deliberate, stripping away her illusions of control. Dad jumped in, his voice defensive. "Brenda, stop this. Gloria's worked hard for Vitaltech. You can't just destroy her career." Mom nodded, her tone pleading. "Think about your sister Brenda. This isn't right." Their words stung, but I was past caring. I turned to them, my voice firm. "Respect isn't a one-way street," I said. "You've spent years dismissing me, siding with Gloria, acting like I'm a child chasing fantasies. I built an empire while you laughed. This is the consequence of your choices. My gaze swept the table, landing on each of them unflinching. The TV screen flickered with a news alert: Vital Tech stock plummets 30% in after-hours trading. The headline hit like a thunderclap. Gloria gasped, her phone slipping from her hand onto the table. She scrolled through updates, her fingers trembling as she saw the market reacting to my liquidation. Investors were pulling out, spooked by the sudden exit of the majority shareholder. The IPO, her golden ticket, was unraveling before her eyes. I watched, my heart steady, knowing this was the price of their arrogance. Mark, who'd been quiet, stared at the floor, his face pale. He didn't speak, but his silence spoke volumes. He'd joined in the earlier jabs, however lightly, and now the weight of the family's misjudgment settled on him. His eyes flicked to me, a mix of guilt and realization. I didn't acknowledge it. My focus was on the chaos I'd unleashed. The room felt electric, every glance and whisper charged with the truth they couldn't ignore. I stood tall, no longer the overlooked sister, but the one who'd rewritten the rules. An hour later, the mansion had become a hub of chaos. The dining room, once a stage for Gloria's boasts, now buzzed with frantic energy. The TV screen flashed another update: Vital Tech's stock had crashed another 15% as other investors, spooked by my liquidation, began pulling their capital. Notifications flooded Gloria's phone, each one a blow to her crumbling empire. I sat quietly, sipping water, watching the consequences of my decision ripple through the market. The numbers were stark, undeniable, a cascade triggered by my single move. Gloria turned to me, her face pale, her voice trembling. "Brenda, please," she said, her earlier arrogance gone. "You can stop this. Call it off. I'm begging you." Her eyes searched mine, desperate for a lifeline. I leaned back, my expression unyielding. "You had years to respect me," I said, my tone steady. "You chose to mock me instead. This is the result." Her hands shook as she clutched her phone, the weight of her misjudgment sinking in. I felt no pity, only the clarity of standing my ground. Dad's voice cut through, sharp with anger. "Brenda, you're being selfish," he snapped. "You're destroying your sister's life over what a grudge." Mom joined in, her eyes glistening. "How could you do this to our family? Think of the consequences." Their accusations stung, but I was done bending to their bias. "You made your choice long ago," I replied, my voice firm. "You picked Gloria's side, dismissed me, and ignored what I built. This isn't about selfishness, it's about accountability." I held their gaze, refusing to back down, my resolve forged from years of their disregard. My phone buzzed, pulling my attention. It was Denise, the founder of a small renewable energy startup I'd backed when no one else would. "Brenda, I saw the news," she said, her voice warm with gratitude. "Your faith in us kept us alive. Thank you for seeing what others didn't." Her words were a quiet balm, a reminder of why I'd chosen this path, to lift up those overlooked like I'd always been. I smiled faintly, replying, "Keep pushing, Denise. You've got this." The call grounded me, a contrast to the chaos around the table. The TV blared a new headline from Bloomberg: Vital Tech collapses pre-IPO amid investor exodus. The words lit up the screen, cementing the reality of Gloria's downfall. Her phone buzzed again, likely another panicked message from her board, but she didn't answer. Her hands covered her face, the weight of the news crushing her. Dad and Mom exchanged worried glances, their earlier confidence replaced by uncertainty. The room felt like a battlefield, the air thick with unspoken regrets. I stood gathering my things, a sense of freedom rising within me. The weight of their judgment, their years of dismissal, no longer held me. I'd shown them who I was, not through words, but through actions that spoke louder than their criticism ever could. As I moved toward the door, Mark's eyes followed me, his silence heavy with understanding. I didn't need their approval anymore. I walked out my steps light, ready to leave their chaos behind and step into my own future. I drove my 12-year-old Toyota back to my apartment. The quiet hum of the engine was a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind at the mansion. Weeks had passed since that night, and I'd thrown myself into my next chapter. I committed $300 million to 10 startups, each one overlooked by the venture capital world. From AI-driven education platforms to sustainable agriculture tech. These were the underdogs I believed in, the kind of visionaries I'd always championed. Every deal was a step toward building something new, something that mattered far from the shadow of my family's judgment. Vitaltech's collapse was complete. The company filed for bankruptcy, its IPO dreams shattered. Gloria's name, once synonymous with success, now carried the weight of failure. Headlines dissected her fall, her reputation in tatters. She hadn't reached out to me since that night, and I didn't expect her to. The silence between us felt final, a line drawn after years of her dismissing me. I didn't gloat or dwell. I simply moved forward, my focus on the future rather than her ruin. My phone pinged with messages from Dad and Mom, their words heavy with regret. "We're sorry," Brenda Dad wrote. "We didn't realize what you'd accomplished." Mom's text followed. "Please let's talk. We were wrong." I read their words, my thumb hovering over the reply button, but I set the phone down. Their apologies came too late, after years of siding with Gloria, of treating my work as a hobby. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. I didn't need their validation to know my worth. Looking back, I realized the true lesson of it all. Respect doesn't require a title, a corner office, or a spotlight. It's owed to anyone who dares to build, to dream, to persevere. Underestimating someone, writing them off as less, can come with a price far steeper than pride. I'd spent years proving myself to a family that refused to see me, and in the end, their blindness cost them more than it ever cost me. My actions weren't just about settling a score, they were about demanding the respect I'd earned, not just from them, but from myself. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you for watching. What do you think of this story? Please share in the comments. Your thoughts mean the world, and I'd love to hear how this journey resonated with you. Stories like this remind us that our worth isn't defined by others' opinions, but by the choices we make and the impact we create. Now I'm pouring my energy into those new projects, each one a chance to lift up the next generation of innovators. I wake up each morning with a sense of freedom, unshackled from the expectations that once held me back. The weight of my family's doubts is gone, replaced by a clarity I've never felt before. I'm not the little sister anymore, not the dreamer they mocked. I'm Brenda, the one who built an empire, and I'm just getting started.